Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to present today, and I'm very excited for the conference in general. My name is Jim Goldfinger. I'm the Chief Customer Officer of Customertimes, based in the US. A little bit of my background: I've been in this area of CRM, if you will, for 35 years. So the presentation today is really going to be about driving business value with Salesforce. Salesforce is a very powerful platform, but it's as good as you make it. And really what I've seen and what we're going to talk about today is sort of best practices, and also how to avoid pitfalls. Why do some projects succeed when others fail? And what I like to say about my own personal background is that I'm both an idealist and a pragmatist. And what I mean by that is, if companies are going to invest in this type of technology, I believe strongly they should get their money's worth. I'm also a pragmatist in the fact that I don't think it's no value in technology for technology's sake, right? So it's just an enabler. Technology is an enabler, and it's important to not lose sight of the business aspirations and business objectives, and ensure that the technology is fitting that and not overplaying the technology again, just because certain capabilities are available doesn't mean we have to take advantage of them if we're not ready for them, right? So one of the things that I've talked about when I look at customer projects is a customer state of readiness and what they're prepared for. Over the years, I've spent over 30 plus years and well over 500 customers, helping them in their CRM engagement. So I'm very passionate about this, and I've spent a lot of time with customers across very many industries. Today, I'm going to focus in three areas because Salesforce is a very big topic, and you're going to learn a lot today and on your respective journeys. Salesforce started in sales, which is the name, right? Salesforce automation. And when you think of CRM, I'd always say the second pillar of CRM is service. So typically, companies will talk about sales, service, and marketing, and then usually they'll add e-commerce as sort of the key functions of CRM. But where the real value props, where you have the opportunity to make the system far more valuable, a lot of companies will focus on sales first. So just in the interest of time today, I'll spend time around sales and then service and then the platform, because I think this is overlooked. One of the things I say that one of the disadvantages of Salesforce is the name. And because it's salesforce.com, a lot of companies, a lot of folks who are not close to it, think of it as a sales automation tool and not much more, or maybe as a CRM tool, but not much more, and not for what you can get from the platform itself. And so when I was competing against Salesforce, I thought, well, and many of you who have learned computing on different platforms, on iOS and Android and Java and .NET and whatever it might be, here is Salesforce introducing yet a different language and a different set of tools. And I thought, why is that necessary if we have all the other tools? And I'm going to walk you through that as well. But I find it's important to get the point across that this is an extremely valuable platform, and it's a great way to leverage a foundation that might be started in sales, service, marketing, and commerce. All right. So with regard to sales, and most of you are too young and you probably never heard of this thing on the bottom of the screen. It's called a Rolodex, right? And it's the way before computers came up, and certainly in this industry and sales automation, this was the way people organized their business, right? They would have some version of this. They call it a Rolodex. It rolls, and it's got different delimiters, if you will, for usually the name of the company or the name of the individual. And maybe I have a different data, I have a different calendar reminder. And so the important thing to think about here is ensuring that you're making Salesforce more than an automated Rolodex, right? It has to be valuable to the users. And often Salesforce is brought in for sales by management as a management tool. And that just never works, right? They see it as a way of managing pipeline, managing opportunities. So I can see which salespeople are performing or underperforming, and that has a very short life of value, right? And so what I'm saying is, whatever we do, let's make sure that there's value for the users. And you see in the second line, I'd say you have to get to the point where Salesforce is working for you and you're not working for it. Again, it gets back down to that point about the automated Rolodex. It can't just be a system that once it's set up, as a salesperson, I key in all my information, because I don't need a system for that. I can go back to paper, right? It has to be one where when I use it, I'm seeing things I didn't put in that are useful to me, right? And so you may or may not be familiar with the term ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. The common systems are like SAP and Oracle or Microsoft, and that's also known as the back end, right? So that's where your orders are, that's where your shipments are, that's where your receivables are, it's where your product master is, where your customer master is, right? And so what I'm saying is, Salesforce is a very open platform. You can bring in data from these other systems, and it's critical in my experience that you do, right? So that when a salesperson uses the system, I see data that I didn't put in that's valuable to me. So the next point is important, and it ties into that. I think a lot of companies look to implement Salesforce because they'll improve productivity or efficiency, right? And I say that's a bad goal, because one, it's not often achieved, and two, it has limited benefit. So to say, if I again automate what I do, maybe I can make 10 calls in a day versus 9. Uh, Again, I don't know that it will necessarily make me more efficient, because once you give me more information, I'm going to spend more time with it, as I should. And so effectiveness, so the difference between efficiency and effectiveness is, efficiency is, can I make more calls? Can I call more customers? Effectiveness is, am I calling the right customers? Am I talking about the right products? Potentially, am I pricing it correctly, right? So give me some guidance. If you bring in more information, say, okay, we're gonna bring in the sales data, last year's sales data, and we're going to show you which customers are buying less this year than they did last year. That's important to me. That's really valuable to me, right? That's going to be a lot more valuable to me than just having a list of customers and then I can decide who to call, right? So if I can identify trends and address them as quickly as I can see them, right? So some customers are buying more. Maybe one of my competitors went out of business. I should capitalize on that, because I might have other competitors that could pick up that business if I don't, right? If they're buying less, maybe one of my competitors is starting to sell a portion of the products that I sell to my customer, and I need to get ahead of that, right? So that's what, when I talk about the business value of Salesforce, it should be used so that I can identify who I should call, what I should sell, how I should price, right? The other big takeaway that I've seen over the years, the last point about the go live being closer to the beginning than the end. So I would also say that one of the reasons, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, is that users of Salesforce are not feeling like they're getting value from the platform is, and I like to say, because they weren't looking for value. Just because it's easy to use doesn't mean that it's I say just because it's usable doesn't mean it's useful, right? So it has to provide value. And I would also say that a lot of users, certainly on the sales side, more than other areas, really don't know what they want until they have something. So it's really important that we recognize that the go live is just the beginning of the journey and not the end. And so we can sort of guess at how I want to use the system and what the data will be used for, but until I start using it, I really don't know. And so that comes into the planning, right? Don't get caught up. Don't try to over-engineer the start. Get going, see what works. Salesforce is an incredibly agile platform to change, and so take advantage of that, right? As an example, here's one of our customers, Sharp Electronics. They had a lot of disparate systems. They had different offices using different systems. So we were able there to bring everything into one system. So they had multiple geographies. They had franchises that they were buying. They put them all on one system. They created quotes inside Salesforce, and then they became orders in SAP. And also back to, by connecting to SAP, as I mentioned earlier, they were able to bring very valuable data into Salesforce. So I could see what equipment my customers own. I could see whether they've been paying their bills. I could see whether their sales have gone up or down one year to the next to determine, because I sell a commodity. So other companies sell what I sell. I have to make sure my customers continue to buy from me. And then they tied in other pieces. So Dun and Bradstreet for data enrichment, if you're not familiar with that. So it's an external list. That's the other great thing of taking advantage of Salesforce. When people talk about a 360-degree view, it starts with connecting the information I have about customers, let's say my ERP system, but there's also external information. So Dun & Bradstreet is one of many different tools that I could share my list with and find out more information about the companies I'm selling to. Maybe they could give me the org structure. Maybe they could give me the sales data. Maybe they could let me know what areas the company's investing in, right? So take advantage, to take full advantage of Salesforce. Another phrase you might hear is system of engagement connected to other systems of record. So a system of record could be my ERP system. A system of record could be a third-party external data source. And then Salesforce is my system of engagement of how I deal with that data. Again, targeting the right customers, targeting the right things to talk about, possibly pricing it. In the case of Sharp, where we use the CPQ, the configure price quote module, sitting on top of sales. And the other piece of the journey is not to do everything at once. So start with just Sales Cloud, then add CPQ, then add Service Cloud as an example. All right. And you're not meant to see these slides too clearly, but it's just to give a sense that there are insights inside Salesforce that you should take advantage of. In this case, there was actually a little accelerator that was on the App Exchange called Clean My Room. And what that meant is, let's look for areas where the data is not quite right. So for example, if I have opportunities where I have them to close last month or the month before, obviously if they're not closed yet, that's a problem, right? So I should clean that up, right? If I have deals that I say are closing this week or next week, but I have no activities against them in the last few weeks, that's a problem, right? So the data can give us insights, and this is insights for users and for managers, but for users also, that it keeps me honest. It can give me reminders of the business that I said I'd be closing that's not closing, right? So take advantage of reports, take advantage of insights. Here's some dashboards that we built for other clients. Again, as you learn Sales Cloud, which is arguably the most popular cloud, and people talk about pipeline reports, what's closing, in what stage, for what amount. Well, seeing the pipeline change is important, right? Because it tells me whether deals are getting hung up. If all I'm doing every month, some salespeople will just say, yeah, it's going to close this month. No, it's going to close next month. And then every month I just keep changing the close date. As a manager, looking at reports like this, say, okay, what's happening? What happened in the last week or month? What fell in? What's new? What's old? What just keeps getting moved along? Something's wrong there. Maybe the salesperson doesn't have a handle on when this deal is likely to close. And then you see things like in the bottom right, lost sales report, right? Why are we losing business? So again, getting back to that title, the business value of Salesforce. What can it tell me? And it gets back to the point I made earlier about it should work for me, I shouldn't work for it, right? So it's telling me why I'm losing business. I also say, don't build reports unless you have a plan to do something with the data once it's available. So if I'm going to build a report for lost sales, I should know how am I going to prevent those. If I'm losing on price, do I need to lower my price, or do I need to do a better job of explaining the value of my product and services, right? So get data out that allows me to be smarter in the way I run my business, right? That's the key takeaway. And then you have other analytics that, again, as I sort of referenced before, is giving me these insights on where deals, where customer, and this is in cases where I'm selling to the same customers over and over. So I have a history, and I look for trends and I look for outliers, right? The red and green say these are either customers or products or regions or some elements, some filter of my business is not performing. It's underperforming, or the greens are overperforming. So I might have companies that have just started to buy, or companies that have just started to buy new product lines from me. Let's figure out why, what triggered that, and let's do it with more customers, right? So Salesforce can give me these insights. It's up to me to find those, to help, to work with clients. And I always say, I don't expect customers to design Salesforce. So as a Salesforce consultant, and the reason we use the term, there's a difference between consultant and developer, right? As a developer, maybe I am waiting for you to tell me exactly what you want the system to do. As a consultant, I want you to tell me where you want to go with your business, not with the tool. And then let's find ways that the tool can help you get there. So if I'm trying to grow, there's a difference between growing wallet share and growing market share. Wallet share is selling more to the customers that I have. And that's wallet share. Market share is selling more customers. So it's always easier to sell to existing customers if I have more to sell. And that's why getting insights like this is going to be really helpful. All right. Now let's talk about service, right? So what can we do with service in terms of value? Well, the first is with self-service. So now companies are expecting more. So we'll talk about channels, right? The channels of service. For many years, it was just a phone call. And before the internet, many of you are too young to know that there was a time before the internet, but there was, right? And we used mostly phones. And so I would call a company to complain about their product, and that was it. And I hope that and before computers, they were writing it on paper, or they were just trying to answer my questions, right? I'd say, this isn't working right. And they'd say, well, try doing this. Oh, that worked? Okay, great, right? Now, with the internet, many users, business or consumers, are looking to self-serve. So where can I go to find how to fix this, right? So if setting up Service Cloud with communities allows me to, what we say, deflect calls and costs, right? So if a customer can go themselves to a website and solve their own problem, and I can track that, then that's great, right? It doesn't cost me. I don't have to have operators standing by. I learn and I can continue to improve that, right? If too many customers are calling about a certain thing, maybe I need to make the product easier. Maybe I need to put some instructions when I send it, right? The other part is that service, as I mentioned before, usually more companies start with sales and add service, right? So service is part of the CRM journey. And some people would say, well, if I connect sales and service together, then the service agent can see if there's any open opportunities. So I can serve you differently if my sales colleague is trying to sell you something right now, I should take that into account when I service you. That's not really practical, right? Service agents are not paid or trained to be thinking about that. But when you're on one system, you actually can send messages, right? So what you can do is in Salesforce, if I've got the pieces connected, then when a call comes in, I can put a line across the bottom. There's an open opportunity, or this customer's been buying less. See if you can find out why, right? So I just want to choose certain conditions. And I mentioned here, don't overwhelm the agent. Don't give the agent everything there is to know about a customer. Give them what they need to know at the time of the call, okay? And the other area of service, again, getting back to the theme of driving business value with Salesforce, is service is typically thought of as a cost center. So I pay for people to man the phones. I pay for setting up the system, right? But it can be a profit center, and it can, and in a few different ways. Depending on the products that I sell, I could sell premium services. So I could say everyone has an 800 number they can call, and we get back to you within, I don't know, 4 hours, 8 hours. But if you buy a premium service, then you get a special number to call. We respond immediately, and if it's a product that has a problem, I'll send you a replacement. So there are ways to sell premium services, which again can turn what's typically a cost center for a company into a profit center. The other is this renewal or proactive replacements and upgrades, right? If I put data into the system, there's another term, IoT, right? The Internet of Things. If I sell equipment that typically starts, think of your own cars, right? Cars, after certain cars, you want to replace when you get to a certain, mileage or kilometers, right? Same thing with equipment, or I mentioned the printers before. Maybe a printer's good for a number of copies. Well, if I'm connected to the copies that it's making and I feed that into Salesforce, then I could see, okay, let's call the customers who have equipment who've made so many copies that it's likely to need to be replaced shortly, right? That's the idea there. So I can be proactive with service. Say, we recommend you either buy extended warranty or buy a replacement product based on either what we're seeing in the usage of our product, maybe the calls you've made. If you make 6 calls over the course of 8 months, then it's time to replace that piece of equipment, right? And the other piece is entitlement. That is that products are on warranty, for example. Again, could be a car, could be a computer, it could be a printer. If I don't have that information, then I don't have to buy the warranty if when I call the company, they don't know I'm on warranty, right? So that's where I need Salesforce to connect to my contracts and to these ERP systems to ensure that you're entitled to the service that I'm giving you. Otherwise, I'm paying too much money to service you, right? You should pay. If I generally charge for things like extended warranties or premium services for quick turnarounds. In service, it's called SLA, service level agreement, right? Then if I'm going to charge for that, I should make sure you've paid for it if I'm going to give you that service, right? So the other thing is I was talking about a little earlier is services now. We're talking about omnichannel, right? And there's multi-channel, and then omni-channel is I could give you multiple ways to check for things, right? So I could give you a phone number to call. I could give you a website to look things up. I can allow you to send emails. So that's multi-channel. But omni-channel is making sure I've connected the dots, right? Meaning if you've called or if you've been to the website and then you call, I can see you've been to the website. Oh, I see you looked up these pieces of knowledge. I see you checked out, you entered these issues. And let me tell you what we've done so far to solve them. And let's see if we can work through the rest here, right? So companies are expecting multiple ways of contacting you. They have preferences, right? And we need to be open to those preferences. And then we need to connect the dots so that you don't feel like you're being treated like different people, different companies. So the key there is we should look like one company to them, one vendor, and they should look like one customer to us by connecting those dots and adding those channels. Okay. And again, this is part of a journey. You don't often set it all up at once. You might set up just with a call center and then add some of these other channels, right? And you'll want to keep track of what the customer's preferences are. So again, here's another example of a customer that we worked with that were sending SMS messages when certain updates happened because they preferred it. We also, in that case, they integrated with Facebook and Instagram and company websites, right? So again, that 360-degree view can be what I know about a customer, but also what's known about a customer external to my systems. And Salesforce is an incredibly powerful platform that's both agile, which means I can change it and adjust it from company to company, but it's also open, that I can integrate with my own backend systems and systems out on the internet, like the social media, where that makes sense to my business, right? And we should be looking for those opportunities. And then the last thing is the application cloud, right? Which is leveraging the platforms itself. And what I've seen, as I mentioned before, one of the problems is the name of the company, that people think of Salesforce as a sales tool and don't think of how powerful the platform is. And so I would say that things to be aware of is that once you've invested in Salesforce, then you, as collectively, as consultants, developers, customers, should be looking for other ways to leverage that platform outside of the typical CRM of sales, service, and marketing, right? And I would also say that companies don't recognize that that pricing is different, right? So they think of like, oh, I'd love to take this application I built on Microsoft SQL or an Access, put it on Salesforce, but I can't afford for those users to pay the same amount. Well, first of all, it might be the same users that are already licensed, and then you may not have to pay anything. But the price of using the platform per user is significantly less than the price of using the platform as a CRM user. And not everyone recognizes that, right? So when you get to where you see the value of the platform, then it's, again, the cost structure is very different. And I present it this way, that taking advantage of the platform, one thing that I've come to appreciate, again, the value of the platform itself is, I usually have this build, but traditional development, if you're building an application, you first want really smart people to figure out what are the data elements that I need and what's the processes that I'm automating, right? But after I have that, I then need experts on the UI, the user experience, right? What should that look like? So I have a set of experts that I have to bring in. Then if I want it to run on mobile, which most people expect these days, I need experts that are mobile experts. And I need security experts. How do I make sure that the right people don't see the wrong information and I don't get breached, right? And then I want to collaborate both internally and externally, right? So I need to open this up to my partners and my customers and suppliers and so forth. For sure, I want to report on it, right? So if I were just building from scratch and I'm a Java programmer or .NET and I'm building an application, I need to find experts in each of these areas. I need to then report on the data. And then if I'm building for a large company or more than one company, it needs to scale and perform at scale, right? Maybe thousands of users, tens of thousands of users without degradation. By building on the Salesforce platform, you're still going to look for that expertise at the data and process level, but you get nearly free of charge the rest. So with Salesforce, you have a world-class user experience. You have automatically the push to mobile, what they call build once, deploy many. You have security built in. Salesforce is being used by tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of companies. So the security model is built in. Collaboration. Again, what you'll learn if you're not already familiar with the communities, right? The communities I have: employee community, partner community, customer community, right? There's different stakeholders that I can make available, and this is built in. And then I have reporting analytics. I now have Tableau. I have Tableau CRM. I've got the standard reports that are in Salesforce. So all that's there, and they've proven scale, perform at scale, right? So those are things that are really important, that you usually need many years of expertise to do well. And you get to, if you build on the Salesforce platform, you get all that thrown in. So that's really the key takeaway there is it's an incredibly powerful platform that has handled most of the issues that customers will be asking about. Okay, and then this is just an example, clinical trial. If you're not familiar now, unfortunately with the coronavirus, you see that we're hearing, thankfully, vaccines are coming out, right? And if you're hearing about the vaccines, what they're saying is we've been in trials and the results are good. And so we've worked with companies that have built applications for managing these trials. And they call them virtual trials because because of the virus, I can't have patients come in and see a doctor every day to see how they're doing, right? So I've got to manage things remotely using a cloud application, right? So this is an example of using Salesforce, a very powerful tool, for an incredibly important initiative that needs to scale, because tens of thousands of patients, have to be tested to determine whether the vaccine's ready. Again, that's just one example, but we've built, and I guess the other proof point of this, maybe the most powerful proof point of this, is the App Exchange, right? If you go to the App Exchange now, I think maybe there's 5,000 solutions on there, and maybe half have been built with Salesforce tools specifically, another half may have been integrated with it. But to think that you could build thousands of applications that companies like us, we've built several applications on the App Exchange. We've used this powerful tool set to build completely new applications that have nothing to do with Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Community Cloud on the platform. And that's a really powerful proof point. But again, I just want to give you some examples of ways that we've used it and what we've seen. And just, the last thing I want to get into is, why do projects fall short, right? Typo, that should say fall short of providing value, right? And so let's get into some of this. So I've touched on some of these. I mentioned earlier, just because it's usable doesn't mean it's useful. I used to work for another CRM vendor. Our products were a little harder to use, a little harder to customize. And so Salesforce was seen to be easy to use and easy to set up. And so a lot of companies said, well, we'll go with Salesforce because adoption will be good, that our users will use it more than the others. That by itself is not value. So if your focus is on getting people to use it, and then means you're not focused on them getting business value out of it, then you're going to fall short of expectations. So I've had companies say, we're using Salesforce, we're not seeing the value. And I say, you may not have been looking for the value, you might have just been looking for it to be easy to use. That's not good enough, right? Also, from other enterprise applications, there's been a tendency to say, well, I don't want to customize it because then I won't be able to upgrade and training will be harder and so forth. And I also think that's a mistake. You shouldn't over customize, but whatever is unique about your business, take advantage of the flexibility of Salesforce to address that uniqueness, right? Don't water down your value just to stay with off-the-shelf configuration of Salesforce. That's a mistake, and I see a lot of companies make it. So take advantage to make it yours. Um, the other thing I've seen is even within a company who has different groups, they've worked hard to make sure everyone uses it the same way. And that's also a mistake, right? If I have different groups, some sell big ticket items that take a long time to sell, some sell small ticket items that have much higher volumes, what we call a shorter sales cycle. You should be using Salesforce differently there. So don't try to make everyone use it the same way and then lose the opportunity to use it the way it could be used for that group of users, right? So it's sort of the subset of the point before. I mentioned earlier, don't make it just a management tool, right? If it's a management tool, the users will stop using it, or they won't keep up the data accurately, and then it'll be a bad management tool, right? So, we talk about WIFM, what's in it for me? Make sure that the sales or service agents, whoever's using it, see value. Look for ways to make their day-to-day better and help them target their activities more effectively. And ensure, often I see that projects are an IT project. This is a technology, it's an application, let the IT team implement it. The IT team should be supporting the business. But if business is not fully invested, it's going to fall short. If the business is expecting their IT group to implement Salesforce without them determining what it's going to take to make it more effective for them, they're going to miss, right? Also on the technology side, if you're not integrating, so because Salesforce is very easy to use, often groups have said, hey, we don't need IT at all. Let's just configure it ourselves. And therefore, they're not integrating with other systems. And therefore, it's just an automated Rolodex, like I talked about before, right? So you should absolutely have IT involved. You should be looking for other systems you can integrate to Salesforce to make it more valuable, like I showed you in some of the other earlier slides, what last year's sales compared to this year's sales, what people are saying about my products out on Facebook, that I need to take into account, right? So leverage what other sources of information that can make Salesforce more powerful. I've seen poor alignment between IT and business, where IT is just trying to, maybe do the minimal amount of work to just stand up Salesforce instead of being fully invested as a partner. So ensure that, IT and business are aligned that way. And I've seen where the team that's implementing doesn't have those skills to do the things that I've talked about, which again is why we're here today, right? Let's make us all more valuable. Either companies like us, like Customertimes, or those of you who are going to become, expert in Salesforce, is ensure that the team that you're using internally or externally has the know-how to do the things I've talked about, to tie in those tools, to bring in data from the outside, whether it's my own data in my ERP systems or it's external data I talked about done in Bradstreet, Facebook, and so forth. And then change management, right? That anytime you implement a new system, I've seen, for example, training done once. That's usually I need refresher courses, right? What I learned in a few hours of training or a couple of days of training, I have other things I worry about, right? So I can't have necessarily remembered all that. Plus, again, I'm usually adding things along the way, right? So as I'm enhancing the system, I have to make sure that I'm training users on what we've added. A lot of times you get enhancements and you don't broadly communicate it, or you don't show the users what you've done, and then it's lost, right? Also, you have turnover in the business that happens in between training sessions, right? So how are you making sure that if you're rolling out Salesforce, let's say for sales, and now I've trained my 50 salespeople, 2 months from now, I just added 6 salespeople. What did I do to ensure they got the same level of training, right? The other thing is technology changes all the time. And if you see what Salesforce can do today, it's a lot more than you could do with Salesforce 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But it's easy to get excited about these new innovations and technologies. But what I've seen is companies, I talked a little bit about, I've lost my screen. I've talked a little bit about the state of readiness. My apologies. That not everybody is ready for new innovations, right? So just because it's available doesn't mean I have to use it right away, and I may want to work my way into it, right? So the key there is key takeaways. And again, sorry that my screen went down, but the go live is closer to the beginning than the end, right? That's an important takeaway. Make sure you focus more on effectiveness than efficiency. We've talked about that, right? It's not just about doing more in a day. It's about doing more with the day, right? Calling on calling on the right customers, talking about the right products, right? And then lastly, I don't know if you could see my screen now, but the other is that not to jump too many levels of automation at one time, right? So if a company is sort of either they're going from paper to automation, or they've just used a little bit of sales doing opportunity management, it's too early to do AI, right? So work your way there. Do step changes, crawl, walk, run, if you will. Okay. Great. Again, sorry for some of the technical challenges, but hopefully you got the main takeaways. And hopefully there's also a way to get back in touch with me if you need any follow-up questions. I'm always available. But I hope your journey goes well. I hope the day goes well, and I welcome you to the ecosystem. Thank you very much.